Who is my UFC fighter of the year? That is what I'm going to talk about in today's video. My name is James Lynch, so I'm doing more year-end content here on the channel. And on Tapology, they have fan voting for their top fighters of the year. And a lot of different ways you can go with this, but let's look at some of the usual candidates. We'll go with the ones actually first that I have on the thumbnail here. The first one is Merab, 2 really big wins, defeating Henry Cejudo, the former champion, defeating Sean O'Malley to win the title. Merab has had an amazing year. That obviously capped off with him capturing the bantamweight title, a huge event at the Sphere as well. So that's one that will get considered. We've got Dricus Du Plessis winning the title, and then following that up with a very impressive win over Israel Adesanya. First fighter to finish Adesanya in the UFC. So first submission win. Almost caught myself there. Obviously, he was knocked out by Alex Pereira, but first submission loss for Israel Adesanya was against Du Plessis. And then you've got Alex Pereira here. What a year he's had. All stoppage win, all knockout wins this year, and retaining his title. And then what can you say about Ilia Topuria? Back-to-back wins. First win over Volk, knocking him out, and then following that up being the first fighter to knock out Max Holloway. So he's getting some consideration as well. You can't forget Diego Lopez, 3 wins this year as well. Money Moicano, he got 3 wins and has certainly made a name for himself this calendar year. Bilal Muhammad winning the title was a pretty good story. You got Islam's big fight with Dustin Poirier. Although, he just had the one fight. I don't really think Islam should be on here for fighter of the year, just fighting once. Max Holloway's on here. He had a great year, but then he lost the last fight. I always have a hard time picking fighter of the year as someone who actually lost this year. You had Nasruddin Imavov with 3 wins as well. Ankalaev, Nurmagomedov, Carlos Prats, 4 fights this year. I mean, what an impact he's had on the UFC this year. But I'm going to keep this pretty simple. My fighter of the year, and I'm going to explain why, and I'm going to compare this person to other people that are being considered. To me, it's a no-brainer. And the fighter of the year for me is Ilia Topuria. No question about it. So first off, let's go back to last year. Okay, we know he was getting the title shot against Volkanovski. Volkanovski obviously losing to Islam late last year, that short notice fight. But Topuria, coming in, obviously, a lot of hype from his fan base and all that. And he talked a lot of trash and he backed it up. So Topuria not only backed it up, he finishes Volk, and then he follows that up by going to finish Max Holloway, first fighter to do so as well. These are 2 of the biggest wins you could ever have in a calendar year. I mean, we're talking about 2 of the greatest featherweights of all time, back to back. And it's not even guys that are, outside of their prime. I know Volk's a little bit older, but at the same time, and I know people will say Volkanovski was knocked out against Islam Makhachev in that fight. But at the same time, again, it's pretty hard to top that as far as 2 quality wins. And then the thing with Holloway, Holloway's lost title fights before at 145, no real secret there. But you think of the win that Holloway had over Gaethje, all that momentum. You thought maybe he could come back and get it done. And then Topuria finishes him. I mean, just incredible. You look at all the fights that Holloway's had throughout his career. Fights with Conor McGregor, Aldo. I mean, he's been in there with some real knockout artists, and he's never been finished by knockout. And Topuria becomes the first one to do that. And again, Holloway's 32. It's not like he's a 40-year-old and you think, okay, well, he's on the decline. No, Holloway was coming off a very, very big win prior to the Topuria fight, and Topuria still finished him. And the other thing we got to recognize, too, is the impact that Topuria has had. Go look at these photos with Topuria, Real Madrid, at the stadium there for Real Madrid. And, I mean, this was like Conor McGregor vibes. It really was, what he was able to accomplish. Talking a lot of trash, performing well in the octagon. We really haven't seen this since McGregor in terms of someone who is just easily marketable and is an international superstar. Topuria certainly did that this year. Now, he wasn't as active as, say, Carlos Prats or Alex Pereira or any of these other guys. But I mean, you can't name 2 bigger wins this year than what Topuria had. You add in the fact that he's become this, big name in the weight class and someone that, I think people became big fans of. It's hard not to like Topuria, and the best part about it is he's 27. He's not even really, you could argue he's not even in his prime right now. He's 3 years away from 30. I know he wants to retire then, but it's just incredible what he's been able to do. And, the fact he's still undefeated. Topuria to me is the fighter of the year. Now, I know there's going to be some critics watching this video. Let's go through some of the criticisms that we might as well address that I know I'm going to get in the comments. So a lot of people say Alex Pereira because Pereira did fight more, but the thing with Pereira is, and it's not his fault, he's got to fight who he's fought. And one thing I will give Pereira credit for, and I can understand why people are picking him for fighter of the year, is that, he saved the UFC's butt a couple times, right? I think every single one of these fights, Hill, Yuri, Khalil, were fights that he took on relative short notice, I should say. And look, he got, first round finish, second round finish, fourth round finish. The reason I put Topuria ahead of him is because, if you look at who he beat, so Jamal Hill, and you could possibly make the same argument about Volkanovski. Jamal Hill was coming off a very long layoff coming into this fight. He had an injury. It's not Pereira's fault that he had to fight a Hill that was coming off such a long layoff, but that's something that people could say, is that as good of a win as, say, Volkanovski or Holloway? And I know people will then say, well, Volkanovski got knocked out by Islam, so it wasn't the same Volkanovski. I know people could say that too. So there's that. So the Hill one, that was still a very good win. You got to give him that, even with the layoff and all that. He already beat Yuri. He didn't really need to rematch Yuri this soon, let's be honest. How often do we see, and I know Yuri did defeat Alexander Rakic at UFC 300, and that's why he was able to get the title shot. But I can't remember a rematch. I mean, I'm sure it's happened. I'd have to go look it up, but I can't remember a rematch for a title fight that took place in less than a year. Like, he fought him in June. Yuri lost to him in November. And the reason they put that fight together was because the UFC needed a big fight for UFC 303. Remember, that was supposed to be Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor. So, Yuri kind of didn't, in most cases, you're not going to see a guy lose his title and then immediately get to fight him a couple months later. That just doesn't happen too often. So, again, the Yuri fight was not, Ankalaev was the best contender at the time there. So, to me, Pereira didn't fight the best guy. I think you can argue that Topuria fought the two best featherweights in that weight class. And don't even get me started on Khalil Roundtree. This should have been Magomed Ankalaev. And I don't know if Pereira wins that fight. And again, it's not his fault, but I just think if you compare Hill, Prochaska, and Khalil Roundtree, the wins that Topuria got were far better in my opinion. So that's why I give him the edge. If this is any other year, if this is, if there's no Ilia Topuria in the equation, then Pereira probably is fighter of the year, because you think of the fact that he bailed out the UFC. He got all knockouts. Like, that's super impressive. And again, we're talking about a guy who's now won titles in multiple weight classes. Very impressive, what he's done in short order and getting all this done. So I certainly am here for the arguments of Alex Pereira. Like I said, though, he didn't really rise to that superstar status that Topuria did, in my opinion, with that as well. Duplessis, I would consider as well. The Strickland fight, was close. Wasn't as much as a statement win as, say, Pereira or Ilia Topuria. I'm certainly willing to hear that. But again, his win over Adesanya was incredible. If he had that win over Strickland, I think it would be, you could make a good argument there, although I would not say Strickland is maybe as good as some of the opponents that Topuria has fought overall. Merab, I'm here to listen to that, but 2 decisions as well. The Cejudo fight was very close, but still very impressive. Diego Lopez, I mean, again, if there's no champions here defending their belt, you could make an argument for Lopez, although I think we can make the argument as well that Lopez didn't really have to fight a great deal of tough competition here, right? Like, nothing against, Sodiq Yusuff, and the Dan Ige fight was kind of weird circumstances, right? With Ige taking that on a couple hours notice. The Ortega win was good. It was a good ranked opponent, but, again, if we're comparing wins, I think the wins that Pereira and Topuria had were a little bit better. Of course, Moicano's been a great story. Would not be upset with that, but again, not as high profile as what the two guys did above. Bilal Muhammad just fought once. Islam fought once. I don't know. I have a hard time doing fighter of the year if you've only fought one time. It'd have to be something like crazy. And let's be honest, Islam was a big favorite fighting Poirier. No real surprises there. Again, I like what Holloway did this year, but he also lost. And then Carlos Prats, again, all impressive wins, but again, when it comes to competition, I think the guys ahead of him are a little bit better. Again, you got Imavov. Like, there's a lot. This was a good year for certain fighters. Even Tom Aspinall, although he just had the one fight against Blades. You got Ivoyev, who got 2 wins. Like, there's a lot of good arguments here, but I'm sticking to my guns here. I'm going to Ilia Topuria. And again, what it comes down to for me is he gets 2 of the best wins you could possibly get at featherweight. He knocks both guys out. Max Holloway's never been knocked out. And he rose to this level that we haven't seen since basically Conor McGregor, in my opinion, where you have this international appeal. Like, you think anyone's just getting invited to go kick a soccer ball around with Real Madrid? No, that doesn't happen. So this was huge. Topuria put himself on the map internationally and became a big star. And to me, he's the fighter of the year. There's no questions asked. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. I just want to hear your fighter of the year, and I want you to tell me why that fighter should be over Topuria, or if you are Topuria, then we can sit here and agree and why we made a good pick there. Why don't we just do that? So yeah, fighter of the year for me, Ilia Topuria, no questions asked. We'll see what's going to happen next year. The time I'm recording this, there's some talk about him moving up to lightweight. I hope he fights a few more times at featherweight. I would like to eventually see him in Islam, but for now, he's got unfinished business. He's just got the one title defense. I'd like to see Topuria do a little bit more in the weight class before we see him move up or have any sort of super fights. Follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, @Lynch on Sports. My name is James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.